Welcome, everyone. My name is Brendan Snyder. Thank you so much for joining me. And we're here to do another episode of the CD and Vinyl Guys. I've got my co-host, Chris Propfe, here. Thank you for joining me on this.
Hey, it's good to be back, Brendan.
And so if you guys are new to my channel, definitely comment, like, and subscribe. But also, I'm going to leave a link in the description area below for Chris Propfe's channel. If you've never gone over and checked out his channel, please do. Really excellent channel. He does a lot of what I do. If you're enjoying my channel, please check his out. I think you will also enjoy that. And so today we've got something a little different here. We're both really big fans of Judas Priest. And one of the albums that we always hear that is a splitting album that's, you either love it or you hate it, is the album Turbo. And we both think that this album doesn't suck. So we're going to do a quick little run through about our love of this album and why we think it's actually should be rated higher in the canon of Judas Priest. And Chris, I'll go ahead and let you take it away.
Yeah. Well, like you were saying, you talk to Priest fans, a lot of times Turbo will come up as the album that they dislike or they want to or forget that it was ever made,
right,
which is unfair. And other metal bands
right,
will use Turbo to describe a bad album of theirs. Like I remember reading somewhere where Kerry King from Slayer was talking about Diabolus and Musica, and he said, well, you know what, that's our Turbo. And
right.
I think it's unfair for people to compare their worst album to Turbo, because Turbo kicks ass. I remember as a kid watching Headbangers Ball, and I would at night, watch it the next morning. The song Turbo Lover was on every episode, and I never got tired of hearing that song. It's got a heavy riff.
Right.
The production is killer. The whole band is on fire. Halford's vocals are phenomenal, and it just builds from there. The whole album is great.
Yeah, each song rolls into the next one. I mean, it's one of the things that I love about the album, but you hit the nail on the head. I think the production on it is stellar.
Yeah.
So this album is coming after Defenders of the Faith, which was a brutal album. And I think, with this album here being the first time that they use synthesizers, I think that's part of what, was sort of a big splitting thing where it's like such a heavy album before that, Free Will Burning and things like that. And then you come in with something like Turbo Lover, and it's got that repetitive sort of beat on it that laid it down, which I think is great.
Yeah.
But I think that's the thing that started to set people off from it. But you mentioned this with the albums where people, it's their dismissive album or their bad album, and they say, oh, that's our Turbo. I've heard some bands do the other of that, where it's like, yeah, they've made the more commercial album, but then it's like a badge of honor. It's like, that's our Turbo. That's when we made, we put all, everything out there kind of thing.
Well, Priest obviously went into the studio trying to make a more commercial sounding record. I mean, you look at the track list, Private Property, Parental Guidance. I mean, that was the kind of music that was popular at the time.
Out in the Cold is one of my favorite tracks that's on here. But
yeah, I mean,
are more commercial sounding. I mean, it's got Halford singing in a lower register, a more even register on it.
Yeah.
They're at a more groove sort of a pace to it. They're not speed.
Right.
Overly aggressive kind of a thing. But then Judas Priest has always made different records. It's not, to me, that was no big thing that they would flip from one style to the other.
Well, it's funny. I'm looking at one of the titles from the album, Wild Nights, Hot and Crazy Days. That sounds like a song that would be off of a Pretty Boy Floyd record or something like that.
Or a Kiss album.
Or a Kiss record, yeah. Right. So you can just tell that they were challenged. But I want to go back to Defenders of the Faith for a second. Okay. Because it is heavy, but they do have some pop tunes on here. I mean, Ride Hard, Ride Free, that's a little poppy.
Yeah.
Jawbreaker sort of has like a sing-along chorus to it.
Mm-hmm.
Love Bites, and Some Heads Are Gonna Roll.
That easily could have appeared right off this album here. And it's funny because I always actually get those songs confused, thinking that it is off of it. But then it's partly because I first had Priest Live, which was recorded on the Turbo tour. And this opens with, Out in the Cold, but it's got Some Heads Are Gonna Roll and these other ones, and they just blended perfectly.
Yeah.
To me, the live album showed the real quality of this, how these songs were able to go over so successfully live. And if you look at the crowds, they are way into it. So I got to question, whether or not it really is that bad of an album, even by the standards of other fans.
And I guarantee you there were more girls in the audience for the tour
Right.
Were for defenders of the faith, which is not a bad thing. So I think Priest was sort of branching out,
Right.
and they were expanding their audience.
Sure.
When Metallica did the Black Album. So it's sort of, being commercial is not always a bad thing. It's going to expand your audience for you.
I agree. I don't, a lot of people say, oh, if you go commercial, you're selling out. This, the band sold out because they tried to be commercial, but they're just bringing in current influences. You're in the middle of the 80s. Synthesizers are booming everywhere. That layered production sound is everywhere. And Priest just brought some of that in on this, but they still sounded like Priest. Halford didn't sing in a completely different style that he never did. They just did less of one style and more of the other. And I will say, this is an album that I've got to be in the mood for. I mean, there's times, I want the really aggressive Priest. And then this album here, this is that one album. I pulled this out more than probably any other album, because from start to finish, this album is great. It's just top notch, in my opinion.
And it came out in 1986. Now, 86 was when you had a lot of these sing-along choruses, these anthemic songs, Twisted Sister, doing Not Gonna Take It. So I don't blame Priest for doing songs like Parental Guidance or Private Property. Those are sing-along tunes. Yeah,
and Parental Guidance, I mean, this was around the time you mentioned Twisted Sister. This was the time of the PMRC and the Senate hearings and the slapping of the parental advisory stickers on these. And short time after this, Priest is even sued for the backwards messages in its music. I mean, this album really captures everything that was going on right at that time, both sound, lyrically, culturally, like all of it. It's one of the reasons I think that it's so great, because it's timeless in so many different ways of what it achieved. As I just mentioned, with sound and style and lyrics and so forth. I love this album, and I just want to quickly point out, for those of you that didn't know, the album itself was actually supposed to be a double album. And this, the more commercial sounding songs, was a part 2 of it. They were going to have the heavy, aggressive album, and then this, and they ended up going with this album here. So now, whether or not those songs, the more aggressive ones, turned up later on Ram It Down, or what happened with those, who knows? But it's interesting to know that they really were working on 2 different aspects. Like, they made that decision. This wasn't a producer that pushed them away. It wasn't the record label. They decided to explore a more commercial side, but they had a double album with it. The label just didn't end up going with it, and they chose to put this out. I'm happy with it, though. I would love to get a reissue as the double album. That would be pretty interesting.
Yeah, that would be cool. And, anybody going back, if you're a Priest fan or going back through their discography, you're going to find 1 or 2 songs on every album that are more pop oriented.
Right.
When I say pop, I mean like sing-along sort of choruses. It's
just melodic.
On this album, they did the bulk of that.
Right.
But Out in the Cold, that's a heavy freaking song.
Yeah. Yeah, there's good stuff on here. And I challenge everyone who is watching this right now, if you question this album or you never really liked it back in the day, go check this one out. Give it a new listen, with under the guys that Chris and I here have just talked about. For us both, this is one of our favorite albums within the Priest canon. We both think this is really good. We hope that this video here sheds a bit more light on it and opens you guys up to it. So go check it out. And at the same time, go check out Chris's channel. Again, I'm leaving the link in the description below. Hope everyone has a great time, and we'll talk to you all real soon. Bye, everyone.
Adios.